My name is Chen Yanyi, and I'm an artist from China. I graduated from NAFA in 2020, and I was majored in three-dimensional practice in diploma in fine art. I was mainly practicing the two-dimensional drawings and sketching and all of that. And after joining NAFA, I became more interested in the three-dimensional practice, for example, like sculpting and making ceramics. And I also experiment in different materials. And I took the process of making each artwork as a chance for me to experimenting with different materials, for example, like wood and brass and light and silicone and so on. And during this process of playing with the materiality of different mediums, I gradually found my interest in the topics of psychogeography and abstraction of emotions and feelings. Yeah. For my interest in the topic of psychogeography, there is an example which I made the work Meander, which is also my FIP work. And so for that work, I took a walk around the areas near NAFA and recorded the feelings and emotions in that period of time through bending the brass wires I carried with me while walking. So the brass wires thus applied forms to the intangible feelings and emotions and became an abstract expression and also the solid psycho landscape of mine. Second year of NAFA, I was quite inspired by the works of some sculpture artists, for example, Anthony Gormley and Rachel White-Reed and the Olaferrealism. And yeah, that is, I think, is the point where I started to think I also want to engage more in the sense of to play with sense of space in my own work. So then I started to do to a more, I think, as a more three-dimensional approach. And then while experimenting with the materials, and it's really interesting to just like follow the materiality of the work, of the material itself, of the medium itself, and then gradually discover my own interest in the kind of like abstract expression of myself. SSS project aims to talks about the relationship between personal memory and the place. So before I started to make this work, I went back to the after graduation from NAFA, I went back to the city in Dongguan in Guangdong province in China, which is also where I grew up in and have lived for 12 years. And so I decided to use this project as a chance for me to not only rediscover the place that I am already quite familiar with, to revisit some of the locations that I used to stay in and have strong emotional attachment to, but also to exploring topic of the place, of what is the meaning of place, what is the definition of it, and this is the topic that I have always been very interested in. And so while traveling to different part of the city, I carried some lumps of clay with me, and each lump of the clay is around the size of my hand. And I used the clay as the medium to record the patterns and the mediums and the materials from the original site. And so basically I pressed the clay onto different surfaces like the street, the walls, and for example, the wasted steel piles, the tree branches, and so on. and the clay thus became like clay molds of the original place and carried with some little pieces and little fragments uh, of the materials from the original site. So after making all of these clay molds, I brought them back to my studio and to use the medium of silicone to cast on the clay and to gain what I regard as the kind of like rubber replica of the original place. And the little pieces of the original materials from the site are also transferred onto the surfaces of the silicone. As I mentioned just now, the work aims to talk about the relationship between the personal memory and the place, but it's also actually for testing an idea of mine, which is the artwork as the personal monument. And I've also mentioned that in my essay. And so this work starts from a purely personal approach to the place. I selected and picked all of the locations I wanted to go based on my own experience and my own memories, and my experience basically provided me with the anchor point for me to um, found the locations and to find the locations and to form new conversations with the place. And the fragments collected from different places are presented to the audience based on my own point of view, my angle of seeing the place. And I regard it as a kind of like reproduction of the concrete material place that already exists, and the reconstruction of the fragments that collected from the original site. What I try to convey through this work is to encourage the audience to form their own first person experience with that place, and to rediscover those simplest and the most basic elements. For example, the material of that place, and being immersed in that kind of place. And I try to turn the attention back to the concreteness, the present, the kind of like reality that is usually covered and hide behind the values conveyed through the monuments. It's really interesting to and really exciting for me to have this chance to like involved in this um, exhibition, which talks about which try to consider like a different perspectives for the three-dimensional art, for sculptures.